Welcome back into another episode of the Believe in Georgia Tech podcast. I am your co-host, Jackson Caudell. RJ hopefully will be joining us here in a little bit. But today, we haven't done a recruiting episode in a little bit. And when you hear the word recruiting, you should also know who we're bringing in for the show. We joined by our very special guest, Najeh Wilkins. He's going to come in and talk about the Georgia Tech 2026 class. We'll go position by position in a quick little rundown. We're not going to spend hours talking about prospects, but just kind of a little rundown. I think everybody knows how important June and July are, especially June, for official visits, camps going on right now. Like I know the Corky Kell 7-on-7 is going on right now at Georgia Tech. But before we get into that, how you doing, man? It's been a little bit.
Yeah, it has been a while, man. It has been a while. I have missed the show a little bit, man. Love always coming in, giving some recruiting intel, man, and always just love seeing what you guys are doing. You guys are doing a great job on this show, and just keep up the good work, man.
Absolutely. And, obviously before we get into this, we appreciate the growth we've seen and the support you guys have given us. If you're watching this, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you hadn't already. We try to do a show weekly when we get into football season. We try to do multiple shows weekly, but, we're going to be kicking things up. It's ACC Media Days are around the corner, which means fall camp is around the corner, which means the game against Colorado is right around the corner, which I will be at in the fall. But I guess let's dig into it. So Georgia Tech, coming off of one of the best classes in program history, you had Josh Petty, you had Tay Harris, you had Dalen Pinson. Like you had a lot of high-level players in there, especially from the state of Georgia. 2026, things have started to pick up a little bit. So, and I know there's different recruiting sites out there. Me personally, I use 247. So whenever I'm saying rankings, it's reflecting 247 rankings. If you use Rivals, that's okay. If you use On3, like that's okay too. Like me personally, I use 247. So looking at the class right now, there are 9 commits. Overall ranking, according to the 247 Sports Composite, is 49th overall. Things are obviously still building. I guess let's start with quarterback, because I do think one thing that's interesting, when we started last year with the 2025 class, Grady Adamson was one of the first commits to jump into the class. So they don't have a quarterback yet. They've had a couple of players visit. Kind of what is your read on the quarterback position so far, and, kind of what can fans expect, as the summer develops?
Yeah, I think it's a position they're not in a rush with, Jackson. I think they're going to just go through the whole process of official visits, right? They had Easton Webb on. I was able to talk to him a little bit, obviously about his visit. You also got Mason Holtzclaw was another one that got an offer from Tech. But the state that you could see here is either Oklahoma or Texas. I would say them get another guy from around that area in order to kind of come in. But I don't think I don't want to say it's not a top priority, but I feel like Tech feels really good about the future of their position, especially with so many guys they got. Grady Adamson, who you talked about last year. Obviously, it'll be Aaron Fowler's job to lose. He'll likely be the starter, and he's still got guys after him that can still step in and play. Graham Knowles is another one. So I don't think this is a position that's of top priority for him.
Yeah, and I know that that feels weird to say that quarterback's not a top priority, but I do think you have to look at the numbers. Yes, Haynes King, this is his last season, but you have Philo on board. You have Graham Knowles, who according to the coaches and what we saw, took some small steps. He's going to be the backup. You already have Grady Adamson. So like that is a tough situation for a high school quarterback to step into. I'm always an advocate for getting a quarterback in every class. I think you need one, because just in this transfer portal day and age, you never know. And I think taking at least one, but obviously Tech has numbers there. I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out. Like you said, Easton Webb was a guy that visited. I do like him a good bit, but I think that's one storyline like I'm watching from now until like the end of the summer or in going into July is, okay, what happens at the quarterback position, just to see like what they do. I guess let's transition to running back, because that is a position that Georgia Tech picked up on recently. Like they did really well last year getting JP Powell and Shane Marshall, getting Xavier Rucker from Alatoona. Like that's a guy I really like. I know you've been able to watch him a little bit. Kind of what was your thoughts on that pickup when he committed a few weeks ago?
I think it's a great pickup. The thing that stands out to me about his game, Jackson, is his ability to block and also his ability to catch the ball at the backfield. Led them in receiving last year as a running back. So he's continued to fine-tune that game. And he has really good bursts. He gets to that second level quickly. He's not dancing, and he gets right up the field. So I think that's a guy that's underrated. A lot of people don't know about, but it's going to fit that Georgia Tech mode and system very well.
Yeah, and like I said, JP Powell, Shane Marshall coming in. You'll have Jamal Haynes. This is his last year, but you've got Malachi Hosley. Like you have Trelane Maddox. Like again, the running back position is pretty set right now, assuming no departures. And look, to me, I think, Rutgers going to make it even better. Two recent additions were to the wide receiver room. Darnell Collins out of Rome. I was a big fan of that pickup. And also Jeremy Winston out of Rome. Again, and just before we get deep into the receivers, one thing I think you'll see, it was a big thing for last year's class, was the in-state recruiting. Like, that was obviously a huge priority for Brent Key. You look at the commits right now, like there's only one that's not there's only one that's not out of the state of Georgia. And look, I know they go elsewhere to we talked about the quarterback position. They do look elsewhere for different types of position, but it does show you the premium that they're putting on in-state recruiting. And when you are, I would argue, the most talent-rich state when it comes to high school football talent in the entire country, like that, obviously that makes plenty of sense. And like, that's not news to anybody, but I do think it's worth pointing out. But yeah, so the two new recent receiver recruits, kind of what were your thoughts on them, and kind of what are some other names we might need to know?
For sure. Real quick, I want to touch on running back. A name to watch is down there at Court Carroll right now is CJ Givers. The staff loves him. If they add one more back, Jackson, it will be him. He fits their mold well. He loves the program. He loves Norvell McKenzie. So that's a name to watch too. Could see a commitment from him soon. All right, wide receiver, man. Darnell Collins, man, and Jeremy Winston. You know the theme though, Jackson? These guys is big, physical, and athletic, right? It's not just 50-50 ball, but these guys, great catch radius, breakaway speed, hard to bring down. And when you got two guys, usually though, Jackson, they've been going after kind of the smaller niche guys, right? I think Malik Rutherford, Bailey Stockton. They got some physical, athletic guys, and that is really good for a quarterback like Philo, who is a little bit more of a risk taker, right? When you have those windows and those guys going to come down with it's perfect. I think they're still going to go after target Kevin Cochero out of Houston County. He would just fit them. That's three receivers, if they can land him potentially, that are 6'3" and above and physical, almost nearly 200 pounds. The other name to watch out for, and he really likes Tech, that's Craig Dandridge. I know he's trending towards Georgia. I expect Trip McKnight, though, to push that all the way through. No matter if he commits to Georgia or whatever he decides to do, that's probably going to be a late flip potentially. Not saying he will, but he really likes the program, and Coach McKnight really likes him. So those are two names I'll watch for as well.
I will say this: that would be my favorite player in the class. Like, I love him. Like, I'm always wary to give that out because 2 straight years I've given out, hey, this would be my favorite player that would add in this class, and they commit elsewhere. So I'm not doing that this time. I'm gonna no jinxes allowed this time. Also, when you were talking about kind of the smaller receiver stature and that kind of build, also Jordan Allen, from Buford, he's going to come in, tons of speed. I know me and you both like him. So yeah, I do think the receiver body types, I think, is something worth pointing out. And I'm also keeping an eye on Craig Dandridge. Like, I think he is the most underrated receiver in the state of Georgia. And I know that's weird for a 4-star, but I think he should be rated higher than that. And we'll see. That's going to be a tough recruitment to win out on, but I'm going to keep an eye on it for sure. What about tight end? That's a position that I don't think gets maybe enough love. I know they brought in a couple of 2025 guys, but as far as kind of what the plan is for 2026, kind of how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, as far as tight end Jacks, you might see him add a guy or two. Same thing. They feel really good about the position. They like the development of Luke Harpering and what he's been able to do. Got another year of Seether. That one there is a little bit hard to get a gauge on. I know they added Kevin Roush. That one's a little interesting. I haven't heard too much buzz. I'm definitely gonna have to look into the tight end role a little bit of where they could go. I didn't see a lot of offers. I think that's when they're going to continue to just evaluate, get a couple guys on campus and see. I would throw out Jack Richardson, but they see him more as an edge rusher for them.
Yeah. So, I definitely would agree with all that. And I think, the position we usually spend a lot of time on when it comes to Georgia Tech is offensive line. Like, it has been a priority. Like, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. When Brent Key came in, he and Jeep Wade have done a really, really good job. You got to see some young guys playing right away. Ethan McKinney he was a starter at left tackle a couple of years ago. He's going to be the starter this year. Harrison Moore got plenty of time last year. Obviously with the big recruiting class last year with Petty, Peyton Joseph, and those guys. Look, they made 2 big additions over the weekend with Courtney Hurd, Cortland Hurd, the Hurd twins, as everybody knows. Kind of give me a breakdown of what they're going to bring to the room and maybe some other targets, to kind of keep an eye out for. Georgia Tech usually brings in quite a few offensive linemen. They did last year, and kind of your expectations for that.
For sure. So just talking about the Herd twins, I mean, same thing, underrated guys, like 3-star ranking, but doesn't really fit what they are. 6'7", 6'6", both of them, 280 plus pounds. I mean, when you got that, and it just shows what Georgia Tech wants to be. They want to beat you on the line of scrimmage. And when you're recruiting that at a high level, it says a lot. So Coach Deep Wade is known, to your point, Jackson, about development, right? Ethan McKinney, him being able to be a starter so early on in his career, seeing high-end guys like Jordan Williams, like, that's all Coach Wade and his development and getting those guys to a level that they can play and play at a high level. So I expect the same from the Courtney or from the Hurt twins brothers. I expect them to come in. I expect them to learn. You know what I'm saying? And I expect them to be ready to go in a couple years for them. Both are very physical at the point of attack. They open up gaping holes and they both can be anchors. So they complement each other really, really well. Now, who could they target? Who could they go after? Very interesting. So Tyreek Jemison is a name to notate. I know he took Ole Miss, North Carolina, NC State. He loves Coach Wade in that program. He's very high on them. Academics is a key point for him. I've talked to him several times, and he loves the program. I think that's one you're going to probably see late. Has an OV scheduled, Jackson, for July 13th. So that is going to be one to watch for to see kind of how that pans out. Coach Wade loves them. In-state visit or in-home visit, met the parents. That's a high-end one. Ben Mabinga is another one to watch out for as well for Georgia Tech. See if they can land him. Loves the OV, loves the program, high-end contender for them. And they have the number one spot right now, as I reported a few weeks ago. Now, we know how recruiting is. It is a little fickle, but that is another guy to watch out for. Interior offensive line, that one is very interesting. Two of the guys they really wanted, Jackson, are off the board, right? And they, got beat up by Georgia. Zakai Holton, who recently just committed today to Georgia, and Zachary Lewis. Both of those guys are going to Georgia. So I think you're going to see them probably target a couple in-state guys, and then they're probably going to go out to the southeastern Texas and try to get a couple guys there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to touch on was they missed out on a couple of guys. So kind of like, where do they go now? And I know you touched on that in your article today. And like, I know we're doing a quick rundown on this, but like for anybody that wants, even more in-depth, like Georgia Tech recruiting talk, obviously Najeh's got that covered. Go check it out at Georgia Tech on SI. Does a great job all year round. And broke down kind of that stuff today. So let's shift over to the defensive side of the ball because right now the only commits are in the secondary, but let's start with the front seven. Obviously, that's kind of been, I still think, the biggest point where, hey, Georgia Tech has to get better at the defensive line. It's kind of been like they were not very good in 2023 in first year, much improved last year, and there's hope that another big jump is going to be this year to be a pretty good unit. But kind of how do you see the defensive line recruiting playing out as they don't have a commit just yet?
Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, they're going to have to land some guys. They're going to have to beat out some of these top end teams like a Georgia, like a Tennessee. My first to mind, the recent transfer to Buford, and that's Drake Quinn. If they can land this commitment, that'll be huge to kind of light a fire, light a match under this class, right? That would be a significant get because he's a 4-star across many recruiting rankings, right? So for Georgia Tech, how do you keep him home? So that is the big one for the defensive line. Obviously, they have to target, high end guy. That can come in and probably put. But he is very.
Well, hopefully we'll get Najeh back in just a second. But like to his point, like I think I'm interested to see how the defensive line recruiting kind of winds out this year because like we talked about this last year, like the defensive line group that they brought in last year was kind of underrated, and I want to see how they build on that. Christian Garrett, obviously a 4-star, Derry Norris, Blake Beelan, like those guys, and those guys were all very impressive in the spring. And then Georgia Tech didn't take a linebacker in last year's class. And I think we asked Brinke about that, and that was kind of by design. Like you look at the numbers that they have right now with Eford, with EJ Lightsey, with Jackson Hamilton, the recruits or the transfers that they brought in, Melvin Jordan, like they're probably like 6 deep at linebacker. And I think it was, just in kind of terms of how everything's shaken out, like they wanted to focus on the line of scrimmage. They made a big emphasis in the secondary with Tay Harris, with Pinson. So how they attack the front seven recruiting to me is going to be kind of interesting because like me and we were just saying, like they don't have a commitment right now. Drake Quinn is like the one everybody has their eyes on, like 4-star defensive end. Like that's going to be obviously a really big deal. Look, I think we got him back. Welcome back.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that, man. My connection.
No, go. Were you going to keep going? I was kind of talking about the defensive line there as well.
Yes, sir. No, so I was gonna say Jack. So Jack Richardson's another one, very underrated guy. So the reason he's interesting, Tech may let him play two sports, Jack's potentially, right? He could
Mhm.
potentially play baseball and also football, which is what he wants to do, right? And we know how good Georgia Tech did this year. Jack Ramsey's obviously the new baseball coach. That just makes a lot of sense. Be a two-sport athlete, and he's very smart, a cerebral 4.0 GPA, but he also can rush off the edge. So Drake Quinn and Jack Richardson are kind of some names to know on the D line.
Okay, so let's shift to linebacker real quick. Obviously, Tech didn't take one last year. Brent Key talked about that and said that was just kind of how the board played out. How do you see them attacking that position this year for the 2026 class?
Yeah, so Jax, they added obviously CJ Gamble. I think it could be very well the same thing. They feel really good about the group. They like the development of Tahaj Butler. They obviously like Kyle Efer. I know those guys are kind of getting towards the end. Some of their veteran guys, but they feel really good. The portal, they also hit as well and brought in some guys to kind of fill those roles. So I think it could stay to one. I haven't heard too much buzz around them adding another. Maybe we'll see something different. Maybe a guy, gets off the board and they go and try to flip him. But currently, right now, they feel really good with Gamble.
Well, that's good. And I misspoke earlier because I said they didn't have a commitment in the front seven, but they do have CJ Gamble, and I know they really like him. They got that commitment earlier in the cycle. So the position we probably can talk about the most today is the secondary. They've got several commitments there. Do you see them adding any more? And kind of what do you think of the guys they got in so far?
Yeah, man, they got some dudes, man. Coach Peoples and obviously Coach Jones, they know what they're doing. They recruit at a high end level. Shout out to Coach Jones, man. Travis Stevenson has been tough. I'm not going to lie, Jackson. A lot of people want him. And they're going to have to fire off some guys similar to Dalen Pinson. Remember, there was a lot of buzz around him going to USC, and they had to fight that off. So it's going to be the same thing. People are finally starting to realize how good Travis Stevenson is, and he's just a freak. He's a freak, and he's a different breed. So that's going to help them immensely, right? Then you look at Jaden Terry. I think even though I talk about Stevenson, he's a freak. Terry's the best one out of all three, and with obviously Crumity. These guys are great, and Terry just the ball skills. He is a pick waiting to happen, and he not just looking to pick it off. He want to take it back for 6, and his footwork when you watch his film, ball skills, how he anticipates the ball, how he can close down separation, his technique. He's a very, very good, defensive back for them. So explosive. So the position that they have not got yet, Jackson, is safety. Got to watch out for safety. They still want to go after the position. Some names out there they like is Blake Stewart. I know a lot of people are talking about Clemson. It's going to be something to watch. Clemson has 18 recruits, 2 cornerbacks and 2 safeties. They might have to drop somebody if they're going to land Stewart. And the other guy to watch it for nobody's talking about is Lasiah Jackson out of Lee County. Woo! Hey, he will knock your head off. You know what I'm saying? That's what you want on your back end. They got Tay Harris right now, obviously. They got some really good safety play. That's still gonna be a guy to watch, though. Same thing with Drake Quinn. If they can land one of those 2 guys, or maybe even both, Jackson, that's gonna get them back into that top 25 conversation they had last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there. And right now, the only blue chip prospect they have committed right now is Jaden Terry. He is a 4-star player. So I'll get you out of here on this. I know you got to go, but who are the names we need to know? I know you probably mentioned some of them throughout, but who are the top names we need to know and to watch for the rest of the summer? Because obviously June's a big month.
100%. Great point, Jackson. Yeah, so I'll stay with Lasiah Jackson. That's a top name. You know what I'm saying? That'll do a lot for their recruitment. Tyree Jimison's another one. Everybody sees how good, he is and what he can bring to the table. The kid has gotten so much better. He's bigger, faster, stronger. He's cut weight, Jackson. So that's going to be obviously another name to watch. Talked about Craig Dandridge, talked about Kayvon Cochero. All those guys are going to be top-end guys, wide receiver wise to watch. I talked about C.J. Givers. Jerrion Campbell could be another one if they miss on Givers that they try to land with this class. So he's going to be one, obviously, to watch. We talked about D-line. I'm trying to think if I give you one more. Blake Stewart. I'm trying to think, is there another one there after? They'll probably add 3. I'll say this. They'll probably add 3 to 4 defensive linemen, whether that's edge rusher / D-line. Look for them to add 3 to 4 guys, though.
Okay. Well, we will definitely get you out of here on this one. Obviously, people can read you over at Georgia Tech on that side. Do you want to plug anything while you're here?
Oh, I appreciate you, brother. Yes, man. Look, y'all follow me on all social media platforms at NAJE. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. And obviously I'm on Georgia Tech on SI, man. So y'all check me out, man. We always doing articles on there. I got a new recruiting show as well that's kicking off, man. So I plan to stay plugged in. Until I hear, I will feed it to Jackson, and also I'll feed it to Believe on Georgia Tech, man. So if y'all not subscribed to Believe on Georgia Tech, what y'all doing? Like,
that's what we tell people all the time, and usually people do subscribe. Like we get a lot of love and support like that. That's what makes covering Georgia Tech so satisfying. Is the fan base is awesome, and they always show us a lot of support in the news. But everybody, go follow Najeh. Does a terrific job. Nobody better in the recruiting business, and we will have you on before the summer is over. I promise.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
See you, man. All right. So before we wrap up the show today, I know we didn't have wanted to talk a little bit about baseball. Look, James Ramsey hire was official. I'm sure everybody has probably seen the press conference by now. It was a pretty long press conference. Like it lasted nearly 40 minutes. You had Ramsey being introduced. You had interim AD John Palumbo. Obviously, Georgia Tech still searching for an AD. That's ongoing. I don't have any updates to give you there. Like we'll hear something when we know. Just a couple of notes on that. Like I think a couple of things that stood out, and I tweeted a little bit of this out or posted on X, whatever you say now. I think Ramsey met this job. He knows the expectations that come with it. He said he thinks next year's team is Omaha caliber. Look, obviously a lot of players can come back, like Drew Burris back, Alex Hernandez, Caleb Daniel. We'll see what happens with some of the draft guys and, whether they decide to come back. But next year's team is definitely Omaha caliber. And he said he thought this team was Omaha caliber. They were pretty young. Some things, obviously they didn't play well in the regional. But look, Murray State is in the College World Series. They won the Oxford Regional. They took 2 or 3 against Duke in the Super Regional. Like they're the Cinderella story of this year. And, they just happen to be in the same region as Georgia Tech. A couple other things, like he said, he wanted to improve the pitching and the defense. Like he talked a lot about that, and I think that's probably music to most Georgia Tech fans' ears. I know the pitching has been a sore spot. It's been a sore spot pretty much since I've been here. At least, it goes back a while at least too. And this year's pitching staff looked a lot better than the previous ones on paper, and then things kind of fell apart when they got to the regional and the tournament and everything. So. He put a big emphasis on pitching and defense, talked about building through the high school recruiting ranks and then supplementing through the transfer portal. I don't think that's a surprise. He talked about wanting to play a lot of kids early and just kind of the reality of the situation when you're going after a lot of these highly ranked recruits that also could be MLB draft picks. Like if you're not going to play these guys early, like they're not going to come back. Like guys that get drafted in the first few rounds or so, or even the ones that get drafted later, like if you don't have a plan in place to play them early, like we've seen with Burris and Hernandez and Daniel and some of these other guys, like you don't have a chance to get them to play. And he talked a lot about that. I thought that was pretty notable. And, Scott Strickland, the former UGA head coach, he is going to be a full-time assistant coach. Seems like Matt Taylor is going to be staying as the pitching coach. So there's not really going to be a whole lot of turnover. And look, that obviously was a big thing, with James Ramsey staying. You're going to have a really good core in place. We talked to Drew Burris and Von Lackey afterwards. They were super excited. Like, me saying it right here doesn't really give it justice. Like Drew Burris was like glowing. Like he really was super happy that James Ramsey was staying as a head coach. So those are kind of my main takeaways from the press conference. Obviously, but not to mean in a mean way or anything. Baseball's kind of going to take a little bit of a backseat with things now. We got obviously the transfer portal is open. Like Ramsey said, I think they're just going to supplement in there. Like I don't know that they're really going to be after any super big names, so we'll kind of see what happens there. But obviously we'll have to wait till 2026 to see how James Ramsey's first team turns out. Pretty much to wrap up the show, really the only things move forward. Obviously, we'll keep you up to date as we can with the athletic director search. There's going to be plenty of recruiting news. I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. June is a super massive month for recruiting. July as well. Mentioned it earlier on the show. You got ACC Media Days are right around the corner, and then fall camp will be starting, and then it'll be time for Georgia Tech, Colorado, and what's going to be a pretty highly looked after game. Highly sought after season for Georgia Tech, and we'll kind of we'll be talking plenty about football, as the weeks lead up to it. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. Love Najeh coming on. Like obviously not a super and this is more of kind of like a quick overview Najeh works a lot of different jobs and is doing other things. As you can see, like he took time to do this show in his car, so he's the best. Go follow him on social media. Would love it if you guys would subscribe if you hadn't already. Like the video, go follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review. Helps us out tremendously and helps us grow. And we will look to kind of record next week. And thank you guys for tuning in, and see you next time.